Oh, baby. We're back. All right. This segment, we are going to talk about Susan Rice and her briefing of Congress on the Syria issue. Susan Rice briefing Congress on anything ought to be a non-starter. Of course, the sycophantic traitors and these minions of this administration probably will not stand up and do the right thing. You know, in Benghazi, she read straight off the talking points that were given to her by the administration, which now everyone, I mean, I don't care what kind of a rock you live under, now everyone knows that it was all a lie and it was all a bunch of nonsense designed to mislead America and the watchdogs of the press and Congress, frankly. We now know that Benghazi was really an arms deal to funnel weapons to Syria before this latest blow-up with the chemical weapons, so that Obama could support his friends in Al-Qaeda, which, quite frankly, I don't know how you don't classify that as aiding and abetting the enemy. I really don't. I mean, that's a treasonous charge, folks. Aiding and abetting the enemy is one of the primary definitions of treason. And if we're fighting Al-Qaeda in Iraq and Afghanistan, but we're supporting them, giving them weapons, guns, arms, and training in Syria, I got to ask the obvious question. What the hell kind of a national policy is that? And not to mention the fact that if Obama is directly giving these orders, and obviously he is, I mean, nobody's just doing this on their own and not telling the stupid idiot up in the White House, right? I mean, you don't actually believe that these people are operating independently, do you? So if that's the case, why isn't Congress charging him with treason? Well, Congress now needs a briefing on Syria. And who do they march out? Susan Rice. You've got to be flippin' kidding me. The backlash from her last testimony was shameful, to say the least, and it completely terminated and damaged her credibility beyond any reasonable expectation of ever recovering. And yet this president then turned out and made her the ambassador to the United Nations, which ought to speak for itself. I mean, talk about an impotent and inept organization. The United Nations, you know, Bill O'Reilly made an excellent comment yesterday. I'm no fan of O'Reilly in a lot of ways, and he's a sycophant for a lot of what goes on in this administration and in the nation. But he made a very interesting point the other day, which has nothing to do with politics. He said they don't make enough Viagra to make the United Nations not impotent. And he's absolutely correct. I mean, these guys are infighting with themselves and slapping each other around. So, you know, all they're interested in is what's in it for me. And the truth of the matter is, anyone who even remotely believes that the United Nations has any credibility whatsoever is either on the dole, on the take, or is looking to get in there, and so that they've got their free ride, right? But the real truth here is that now she is the ambassador to the United Nations. I say that with a lot of sarcasm. If you can't hear the dripping sarcasm, listen again. And now she's going to go in there and brief Congress because at this point the Congress has to make a decision on the Syria thing, right? So the reality is every member of Congress should watch these videos. This is a statement, by the way, that she made, right? Every adult American, every member of Congress should watch those videos. See that suffering. Look in the eyes of those men and women, those babies, and dare to turn away and forsake them. I got to tell you, there's a new story out right now today And we're going to talk about this a little bit later in our third segment, which is checkmate on the Syrian chemical issue. This is from a paper in Germany. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has repeatedly rejected requests from his field commanders for approval to use chemical weapons. The report, which was in Bild am Sonntag, which is a widely read and influential Sunday edition newspaper over in Germany, reported that the head of the German Foreign Intelligence Agency, last week he told a selected group of German lawmakers in a briefing that intercepted communications that they had, and by the way, because of the NSA's interaction with international partners, the odds are very, very good that we gave them that information, right? And what that means to you is that means the administration, our administration, also has that information. But they're selectively picking and choosing what they want to use as their excuse to go to war. They intercepted communications that convinced German intelligence officials that Assad did not order or approve of the sarin gas attack on August 21st, excuse me. You know, it's very interesting. The material was used in the eastern suburbs of Damascus that have been controlled by the opposition for some time, said Denis McDonough at CNN's State of the Union. It was delivered by rockets that we know the Assad regime has, and we have no indication that the opposition has those same rockets. Well, let me tell you something. The German intelligence briefing to lawmakers was completely the opposite. It doesn't fit the narrative that's being pushed by McDonough and Obama and Susan Rice. The article states that German intelligence does not believe that Assad actually sanctioned the alleged attack. Now, Der Spiegel, which is another German newspaper, and by the way, the Germans, for the record, have an axe to grind here because they've found that they are a victim of the Obama administration's NSA super spying under the auspices of this international, horse hockey garbage they've been pitching. And all of our allies are furious at us because it's very apparent that we're not only just spying on the American people, we're not only spying on terrorists, but we're spying on our friends. I mean, guys, they bugged the UN, they bugged embassies around the world, and they've got intercept communications links and satellite links and antennas on the roofs of every embassy around the world, capturing, seizing, and stealing the private communications of our allies and our friends, as well as our enemies. In fact, it got so bad that yesterday, the Germans actually flew a helicopter 200 feet above the U.S. Embassy, taking high-resolution photographs, seeking to find the satellite and antenna dishes that were used as to glom and draw off all of these communications. Now, it was probably more of I would say, it was almost more of a shot across the bow kind of move, right? In other words, they really wanted the United States to know they were pushing back on it, so it was more token than anything. However, it does raise the point that Germany is ticked, and they ought to be. Brazil is ticked, and they ought to be. France, England, all of these nations, well, everybody but England, because England's so deep in bed with us, we're sewn together at the hip. I'd use a different analogy, but this is public radio. The problem is that the real reality is we are cheating and lying and robbing information from our own allies, and they're angry about it. And so they've got an axe to grind by exposing this administration for the lies that it's trying to push out and propagandize America with. And that's why these German magazines are releasing this information. And it's not just, one or two. Der Spiegel was involved in it too. Now, Der Spiegel is like the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal over there, right? And they cited a briefing of German legislators, that said that the Ochre had intercepted a phone call between a commander from the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah and an official at an unidentified Iranian embassy, saying that Assad had ordered the August 21st chemical attack out of anger. The Hezbollah commander called the attack a huge mistake. Now, these are conflicting reports, and Assad told American journalist Charlie Rose yesterday in an interview that was going to be broadcast, there has been no evidence that I use chemical weapons against my own people. Now, look, the simple truth is this. We know for a fact that chemical weapons were used by somebody. We don't know who, but we have some very, very strong reasons why we should be considering it to have been those people that we are actually supporting, the rebels. And I got to tell you that there is a ton of information out there about how psychotic these rebels are. I mean, we're talking here about people that, for all intents and purposes, are killing children and killing Christians and killing basically anybody who gets in their way. And we know that out of the 8 strongest leadership groups there, only 2 of them are non-Al-Qaeda or non-terrorist related. When I say terrorist related, I'm talking about on an official federal government watch list, right? Or terror listed organization. The rest of them all are. There's only 2 that aren't. And they are in the minority, I might add. They are in the minority in terms of power, but also in terms of their total volume and numbers. And what we know is that there is all kinds of evidence out there, including the 100-page report that Russia submitted to the UN, that shows that Assad was not responsible. Now, look, I'm not giving Assad any credibility here. The guy is a monster and he's a murderer. There's absolutely no denying that fact. But the simple truth is this. We don't have enough information to make an informed decision. And, you know, one of the things that I talk about on a routine basis with you guys is this. We use our critical thinking skills to make sure that we are fully informed before we formulate an opinion. And therefore, that enables us to have some level of credibility and the arguments necessary to be able to put our position forth against our detractors, so that when you are involved in a conversation with people, whether it's at your church or your school or standing in the grocery line at the store, whether you are a public speaker, whether you are at a school board meeting or a city council meeting, whether you are sitting there talking to thousands of people in an auditorium, or you're just talking to a couple of friends over at the water cooler over at work, or whether you're sitting there talking outside of your window in your tractor to another farmer next door to you in another tractor, literally 8 feet away, you have the arguments and the capabilities and the wherewithal to be able to back up your arguments with legitimate, proven empirical information. That's the game. That's how it works. That's how fully informed critical thinkers operate. They evaluate all the information out there. They gather the facts. Then, based upon the available information and the totality of that, both positive and negative, against and for their whatever position they came into the issue with, they then make a decision. And they make a decision not based on their preconceived bias or their ideology. They make a decision based on the factual information in front of them, even when that rejects their preconceived bias. Did you hear me? Even when it is rejected by you because that is your preconceived bias, you will accept the facts that change your mind. If you are truly a critical thinker, you have an open mind and you are willing to overlook your own bias and say, I may have been wrong. Why is it no one in Congress? Why is it no one in the media? Why is it no one in this administration, no one in the courts can acknowledge and recognize and just publicly state, you know what, I might have been wrong on that. Now I've gathered more information and I made an incorrect assessment. I mean, I get it that humanity doesn't want to ever have to admit they're wrong. That's just a personal failing of humanity. But the simple truth is this. We live in a world where bias And the idea of falsely promoting a narrative when you know that the truth is something different is a way of life. We see it everywhere we go. We see it on television. Every commercial you see. We exist just for our customers. Do you really believe that sycophantic nonsense from a company? We're here to serve you. Are you really? Come on, man. You're going to try and tell me that profit doesn't motivate your activity, doesn't motivate your positioning? Then we hear it from Congress. I'm running to serve you. I'm running as a servant of the people. No, you're running as a servant of your own pocket, your own ego, and your own personal aggrandizement and gathering of power. That's why you're really running. And then we hear it from the administration. We're here to serve the country. The heck you are. You're here to serve your own interests and your own power absorption. That's all you're here for. And we as critical thinkers, we as true patriots, we as the individuals who are going to restore, preserve, and rebuild this nation as a true republic, we have to act differently. We have to be willing to stand up and say, I may have been wrong. That defines a true patriot. That defines a true statesman. That defines a man of honor and integrity and truth. Why is it that those people don't exist in positions of power, positions of authority? I'm going to tell you why. Because the people who actually believe that way don't seek power. It's that simple. See, what you really need to understand is this. The same behavioral traits, the same symptomatic failings in humanity that make someone a power-hungry ego monster are the same traits that make them want to run for office. The traits in patriots, the traits in true and honest and fair and intellectually honest thinkers and critical thinkers, that's the same trait that they use to say to themselves, I don't seek power, I just seek truth. That's where the falling away comes, folks. I mean, it's that simple. There's no other way to construe it. You see, the falling away, the separation of the wheat from the chaff, comes down to this. Those people who are honor-bound, who have integrity, that's that little thing you have that when nobody's looking, those people are not motivated to seek power through office. Do you understand? The people who are motivated to seek power through office are those people who have the most detestable elements or aspects of their behavioral makeup, their self-view, and their external view of the outside world. They are the Machiavellian princes who say, the ends justify the means. And they have no compulsion at all about betraying you or their party or the people they represent or anyone they represent. You see, traits are traits, irrespective of how they come about. And people like Susan Rice, and people like Barack Obama, and people like Harry Reid and John Boehner, people like Lindsey Graham and John McCain, those people have absolutely zero integrity. They don't have honor. McCain, everybody points to his survival of a Vietnamese concentration camp. And you know what? And prisoner of war camp, I should say. And you know what? I'm not denigrating what he did there. But human nature wants to survive irrespective. And, even traitors and monsters can survive imprisonment. I'm going to give you a perfect example. Mandela. Everybody, goes out there and touts Mandela, how he's such a humanitarian and all this nonsense. Let me tell you who Mandela really is. Mandela is a small, third third-rate communist. He is a globalist and an elitist, and he is a racist. He's a reverse racist, but he's a racist nonetheless. And the truth is, the world all fawns over that guy as if he's the second coming of Jesus Christ, when in reality, you know, he's on his deathbed right now, and as far as I'm concerned, he can't die fast enough. He was imprisoned for many, 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 many years. But he was imprisoned because he was attempting to overthrow a free government for a communistic one. He's an authoritarian. So you can't tell me that just because you spend a bunch of years in prison, that suddenly that makes you some icon and pillar-mounted symbol or example of integrity and honor. It doesn't. The human will to survive will enable you and a John McCain to survive through a prisoner of war camp. We don't even know what John McCain did while he was in there. I mean, for all we know, you know, I'm not casting any aspersions here or making any accusations. I don't know. But, you know, maybe he capitulated and we just don't know about it. I mean, a lot can happen in, what was it, 5 or 7 years? Whatever it was a long time. My point is simply this. Everyone that you see up on Capitol Hill, everyone that you see in charge of the head of one of these extra-constitutional federal agencies, everyone that you see in your local political arena, in your state legislature, in your state assemblies, every one of them have a major flaw in their human makeup. And here's what it is. They seek power. They seek power because they are missing the primary ingredient that balances that out. Integrity and honor. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the damning truth. Now, you know I'm going to get a ton of emails about this. I know I'm going to get a bunch of phone calls. That's cruel. That's wrong. There's good people. I get it. There's a couple. There's a few who got into it with the right aspirations, the right ideas. But you see, even good men can be corrupted. Even good women with the right intentions can be led astray. That's human nature. And to deny that that's the case means that you're not willing to look at the facts. The simple truth really comes down to this. Critical thinkers and people with intellectual honesty are willing to recognize the faults that are in those people that claim to represent them and lead them. The truth of the matter is, we know Congress has no integrity. They've got an 8% approval rating. For the record, folks, that's the Friends and Family plan, okay? Now, if that's the case, why do 80% plus get reelected? Just ask yourself that question. Because integrity is something they don't own, and they are willing to do whatever it takes. The ends justify the means. And they don't care how many bloody bodies they step on. They don't care how many people they have to trample. They don't care how many heads they've got to step on, how many faces they have to mash with their sandals in their march to the top. As long as they get theirs. And once they're in, you know, those who really went in there with the right concepts, the right ideas, you know, oftentimes their dirty little secret is found out. Or they make a mistake and they back a play or they back someone or they do something that they shouldn't have done, and the next thing you know, they've turned. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the issue here. We're going to go further in depth on this Syrian issue, and we're going to understand and try to evaluate what the outcome of this means. We're going to try to extrapolate from the known information that we have where this thing is going to go and how it's going to affect us. Syria has accepted the Russian weapon proposal to turn over its chemical weapons to the international community. The rebels, incidentally, oppose the plan. Now, not for nothing, but that ought to raise eyebrows everywhere. If the rebels are actually opposing the plan, what does that say about them? Maybe it was really them after all, huh? This is a dirty business, folks. Really dirty. We'll be back in just a moment. Stick with us.